Ecuador teeters on the edge of a narco-abyss, its dollarized economy and strategic ports transformed into a cocaine highway through Guayaquil to Europe and beyond. President Daniel Noboa, heir to a banana empire exporting $3.5 billion yearly, presides over a nation where austerity has gutted state power, leaving a void which cartels eagerly fill. Guayaquil, handling 70% of exports, is a sieve. Over 600 kilos of cocaine linked to Noboa Trading SA were seized between 2020 and 2024, bound for Croatia and Italy. Yet no one has been held accountable. This isn't chaos. It's a system. One where narco cash, billions in US dollars, props up a fragile state too broke to print its own money. To understand Ecuador's crisis, we must first grasp the following. You can only buy drugs using cash. Consequently, that cash is drained from the economic system into the underworld. It's like trying to keep a bowl full when it has a hole. You need to find a way to plug it back into the system. Our economic and social systems depend on it, because to replace it, printing money would cause inflation and dilute the current supply at an alarming rate. So the system needs that money back.
We've been talking about U.S. banking involvement in the Mexican drug wars.
The parallels to Wachovia's 2008 scandal are stark, because shutting the bank down risked economic collapse after dark cash ceased to flow back and caused a shortage. Ecuador's austerity mirrors this. After years of deep cuts, powerless police and control agencies show a state crippled, not careless, and an economic and political empire, also too big to fail.
Stay there. Keep still.
In his War on Gangs, President Noboa has carefully avoided the Sinaloa, CJNG, and Balkan cartels. Is it possible he cut some kind of backroom deal to keep drugs and cash moving while he crushes dissent? The 2023 assassination of the anti-corruption crusader and presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio by the cartel known as Los Lobos clearly demonstrated the price of defying the cartels. Ecuador is now ruled by a narco-political order where cash trumps justice and austerity ensures the state will not fight back. Cartels exploit decades of cuts, making Ecuador a laundering hub, its dollarized veins pumping narco wealth into a global system that desperately needs it. Andres Duran, an Ecuadorian reporter exiled after exposing Noboa's links, uncovered a state complicit in its undoing.
Hello, I'm here with Andres Duran, an Ecuadorian journalist who had to leave the country after investigating the President of the Republic. Hello, Andres. Thanks for being with us.
Gracias, estimado Oscar.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you to the Grayzone. I'm here to share what I've uncovered.
Thank you, Andres. During the presidential debate, Luisa González grilled Daniel Noboa about his family's connection with a company that had been caught trafficking cocaine.
Mi pregunta es clara.
My question is clear. Are you or are you not the owner of Noboa Trading, the company that exported cocaine-laced bananas in 2020, 2022, and 2024 while you were already president? 5 prosecutors have been replaced, and still no answers.
No.
Candidate Noboa, you have 1 minute to explain your answer.
No, I'm not the owner, but members of my family are.
When he denied ownership, he did say it was his family's. What's the significance of this?
Esto es un escándalo a nivel internacional.
Absolutely. My investigation, conducted with journalists across Latin America, uncovered a scandal the Ecuadorian media tried to bury. Noboa Trading, linked to President Noboa through Inmobiliaria Zeus S.A., Ecuador, and Lanfranco Holding S.A., Panama, was caught red-handed trafficking cocaine. 167 kilos in 2020, 400 kilos in 2022, and 78 kilos in 2023, 2024, all en route to Italy and Croatia. This isn't speculative intelligence like Lasso's Leon de Troya. It's a blatant crime. And Noboa himself admitted on live TV that the company belongs to his family. A confession with explosive political, legal, and reputational consequences.
Y esto de alguna forma termina exponiendo política, jurídica, y hasta, yo te diría, reputacionalmente al presidente de la República.
Before the president's slip during the debate, these were only suspected shell companies. The company controls farms, trucks, and port access. On March 29th, Raya magazine confirmed Duran's findings. Several police documents directly implicated Noboa trading, making this the first case to directly link an Ecuadorian president to drug trafficking, further fueling suspicions of a cartel state alliance. On April 3rd, Agência Pública, Brazil, reported that Noboa and his brother own 51% of Lanfranco Holdings, which in turn owns Noboa Trading and hundreds of other companies, an apparent attempt to conceal the president's influence, business interests, and tax responsibilities. Noboa, notably, owes $89 million in taxes and fees to the very state he governs. This report confirms Duran's long-standing investigations into the matter.
A esto sumemos de otros datos perturbadores, y acá ya hablamos de las relaciones.
We need to add more disturbing facts and connect the dots. First, under the current president, only $5,677 was allocated to the National Police's Ports and Airports Intelligence Unit, just over $5,000. This is the budget given to one of the most critical units fighting organized crime in the country's ports. Second, regarding the 2022 case, at the time, Daniel Noboa was an assembly member representing Santa Elena province. He asked his top advisor to act as the legal representative for the only defendant in all three Noboa trading cases, Mr. José Luis R. That advisor is now the current Minister of Health, Mr. Edgar José Lama Bonbufa. So while Noboa publicly claims, "It's not my company, I have nothing to do with it, but my relatives are involved," we must ask, if it's not his company, why did he assign his top advisor to defend the sole suspect in the case? At the time, Lama Bonbufa was Noboa's closest advisor, and yet he became the legal representative for the only defendant in the Noboa trading cocaine trafficking cases, despite being a public official, which legally disqualified him from serving as a defense attorney. These are just some of the irregularities. And to all that, let's add another name. Ms. Maria Beatriz Moreno Heredia, accused of illicit trafficking of controlled substances. What exactly was her role?
Acusada por tráfico de cocaína, por tráfico ilícito de sustancias catalogadas sujetas a fiscalización.
Maria Beatriz Moreno, national president of ADN, has been charged, along with 4 others, with the alleged crime of illicit trafficking of controlled substances since August 2024, when she was arrested in connection with the seizure of 1.3 tons of cocaine. Moreno, who was released the same night, also serves as manager of other companies in the Noboa group, such as Nobexport S.A. and even Vinazine S.A., and Agroindustrias San Esteban C.A., which have been recently involved in corruption scandals.
Queridos ecuatorianos, miren ustedes las redes sociales ahora mismo.
Dear Ecuadorians, go on social media right now and look into Noboa trading. Drugs have been exported in banana boxes from the Noboa company, owned by Mr. Daniel Noboa, to Croatia and Italy. Drugs. So, the one making deals with you, or the mafias, is you, Mr. Noboa.
A que hoy lavan en los bancos dinero del narcotráfico que yo voy a combatir. Y le recuerdo que su familia también es banquera.
Let's talk about money laundering. According to that same leaked chat, drug money is being laundered in banks today, something I will fight. And let's not forget, your family owns banks too. Now, let me ask, who is financing political parties and campaigns with drug money? You are. Maria Moreno, linked to drug trafficking, is president of your party and manages 9 companies within the Noboa group. Stop lying to the Ecuadorian people.
No siga mintiéndole al pueblo ecuatoriano.
Time for candidate Noboa's second interpellation. You have 30 seconds.
Luisa, you're a lawyer. You should know that if a company alerts the national police about contamination, it means it's cooperating, not complicit, as you claim. Meanwhile, your friends are still walking free. Do you recognize Maduro's dictatorship, Luisa?
¿Tú reconoces la dictadura de Maduro, Luisa?
Candidate Gonzalez, you have 1 minute to respond.
Una vez más. Noboa Trading, ecuatorianos.
Once again, Noboa Trading, an Ecuadorian company owned by Mr. Noboa, was caught exporting drugs in banana boxes in 2020, 2022, and 2024. 5 prosecutors have been replaced. To this day, the case remains unresolved. The real pact with mafias is yours, and you still haven't answered. Why is the president of your political party involved in a drug trafficking case? The prosecutor's office removed her name from the system, and only after public outcry did they restore the data. So, again, who's funding political campaigns with drug money?
A few days after the debate, Maria Moreno was acquitted.
There's also the case of the manager of Transmabo, who has been charged twice with cocaine trafficking. So, are these just coincidences? Absolutely not. These are not coincidences, because Noboa has had the power to tighten control over the banana inspection system, Unibanano, and he hasn't. In fact, his Minister of Agriculture has been complicit in the so-called drug contamination that several banana exporting companies in Ecuador face on a daily basis.
Well, Noboa defenders will say that somebody else contaminated those containers, that it wasn't him.
That excuse doesn't hold. These containers have refrigeration recorders that track temperature 24/7 from Guayaquil to Europe. Any opening is logged. Yet in none of these cases was the data checked. Trucks are equipped with GPS, but no stop records were reviewed. Noboa Trading owns the entire chain: farms, transport, and Blasti S.A.'s container yards. Hiding 400 kilos requires at least 15 people working in coordination. It's not the work of a lone saboteur. No forensic investigation was conducted. The omission screams complicity.
A single individual, legally declared incapacitated, was charged in all 3 cases, which remain unresolved. What's alarming is that those responsible for contaminating the shipments have not been investigated or arrested. As Duran points out, this type of concealed contamination requires heavy industrial machinery and a full-scale metalworking operation, something impossible to hide. We're not talking about a jute sack tucked away somewhere.
Para hacer ese tipo de cosas, se necesita al menos 15 personas. Al menos 15 personas.
To do that kind of thing, you need at least 15 people. At least 15 people. That is, 15 people gained access to the yard, the truck, or the container depot belonging to the company, Blasti Sociedad Anónima, property of the President of the Republic and his family, to carry out the contamination. 15 people who weren't identified by security. 15 people who entered the house like Peter in his own house.
Duran points out that amid a falling commodity market, the contrast in returns for investors is stark. Per iContainers, a container with 29 tons of bananas is worth between $12,000 and $18,000, while a single container carrying a ton of cocaine is worth around $37 million, according to Europol UNODC. Given that only 10% of containers are searched, the numbers seem to speak for themselves, especially in a system built on impunity. On January 24th in Madrid, President Daniel Noboa hosted a lavish party at a Japanese restaurant. A night of excess during which he was reportedly seen throwing money in the air and calling for a celebration. Spain's Ministry of the Interior later filed a formal complaint over the use of official vehicles during the event. The Ecuadorian government denied the report as false. However, Spain's El Debate revealed that the $15,000 in cash used to pay for the party came from Leon Van Paris, a fruit importer working with Noboa Trading, who allegedly labeled the payment as an advance after covering expenses for Noboa's assistant. Van Paris is a European banana partner of the Noboa Group. Despite portraying himself as a conservative family man, Noboa is known for a rather liberal private life. During the presidential debate, he was even challenged to take an anti-doping test. Instead of addressing the request, he ignored it and quickly changed the subject.
I invite you, let's call. Let's have someone give us a drug test when we leave here. And to everyone, clearly, we want to educate our young people.
Between 2005 and 2010, U.S. federal agents investigated Wachovia for laundering $378.4 billion for drug cartels. The bank was fined just $160 million, a mere fraction of the money moved. The Noboa Trading case follows a similar playbook: lax oversight, massive laundering, and a symbolic penalty that keeps the system intact. Ecuador's dollarized economy, weakened by years of austerity, may rely on this illicit cash flow even more than Wachovia once did. Government estimates place cartel money circulating in the country between $3 to $5 billion annually, though the true figures remain unverifiable. Against this backdrop, Noboa's $5,677 budget for the Port Intelligence Police is laughable, and yet the pipeline remains wide open, just as Wachovia's slap on the wrist preserved its liquidity. Ecuador now resembles a bank too geopolitically big to fail, recycling narco dollars into a state that can't print its own currency, ultimately feeding the global financial system.
Under Guillermo Lasso, we saw evidence of what could have been a deal between the Ecuadorian government, the Balkan mafia, and the Mexican cartels. Do you think this continues under Daniel Noboa?
What's happening in Ecuador is a shift, a transfer of power from the financial mafia to the exporting mafia. That's the reality.
Por un lado, y toma en cuenta que si tú analizas el informe León de Troya vas a identificar más cosas, como por ejemplo.
If you examine the León de Troya report closely, you'll find even more, like the unresolved case of Banco de Guayaquil, former President Guillermo Lasso's bank, which facilitated money transfers for the Albanian mafia. I have capital integration certificates linked to several individuals connected to the Albanian mafia, some of whom also have ties to Banco Litoral, owned by the Noboa family. These connections paint a grim picture of the Ecuadorian state. We must continue digging to expose those involved in organized crime, whether through banking or the banana control system. And who orchestrated the deregulation and dismantling of that system? Bernardo Manzano. While serving as Guillermo Lasso's Minister of Agriculture, he also held a senior role in the Noboa Group, where he worked for nearly 18 years. These facts speak volumes about the current administration. In the end, they turned me, a journalist, into an exile.
Noboa's rise is closely linked to the assassination of presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. Although the blame initially fell on Correísta candidate Luisa González, authorities knew from the outset that the Los Lobos gang was responsible. Leaked chats from Attorney General Diana Salazar, revealed in August 2024, confirmed this. The damage to Gonzalez's campaign cleared the way for Noboa to present himself as a safer, alternative candidate.
And this is the place they were exiting from, that you can see in the now famous video of the killing. And this was a high school gym, the former Javianero High School. This is where it happened.
Aquí fue el lugar en donde pasó todo.
The circumstances of the murder point to state complicity. Villavicencio's armored vehicle arrived late to the designated back exit, yet he was inexplicably directed through the crowded front entrance with only 2 guards. Additional agents assigned after previous threats did nothing. Frame-by-frame footage shows a gunshot fired near his own escorts. He was also alone in the car, violating established security protocols. The lead gunman later died in police custody, raising suspicions of a cover-up. Just hours afterward, police raided 3 locations and arrested 6 Colombians carrying weapons and phones allegedly linked to opposition politicians. Was this a swift law enforcement response or a carefully staged operation? Los Lobos, affiliated with Mexico's CJNG and Balkan cartels, claimed responsibility. By October 2023, the rest of the hitmen had been silenced in prison. Noboa, elected in November, now controls Ecuador's banana exports, military, police, and port infrastructure, all critical to cocaine shipments to Europe. Villavicencio's plans to militarize ports and build a supermax prison directly threatened these routes. Even Mexican President Andres Manuel López Obrador hinted at state involvement. Soon after Los Choneros leader Fito escaped from prison, Los Lobos staged a violent takeover of TC Television in January 2024. The incident gave Noboa justification to declare a war on gangs, though curiously, this campaign excluded cartels and money laundering networks. Noboa's selective crackdown on street gangs, while his family's banana empire is repeatedly tied to cocaine shipments, suggests either deep complicity or helplessness within a cartel state structure inherited from the Lasso administration. Former President Guillermo Lasso's brother-in-law, Danilo Carrera, collaborated with Ruben Cherez, a figure linked to the Albanian narco network. Cherez operated with impunity until his assassination in 2023. The León de Troya report exposed wide-ranging connections to drug trafficking, influence peddling, and high-level corruption, prompting 3 separate investigations. Despite U.S. lawmakers urging President Biden to respond to Ecuador's growing cartel ties, no meaningful action followed. Years of austerity created a power vacuum now occupied by organized crime. Under Noboa's leadership, the state appears either unwilling or unable to regain control.
You face death threats and exile. Tell us a little more about it.
It began in October 2023 at the Esmeraldas Provincial Authority when I investigated property irregularities involving the prefect. She had several inconsistencies in her declared assets. After posting about them at least 3 times, I started receiving threats. As a result, I was placed under the Victim and Witness Protection System until 4 days before the first round of elections, when I was suddenly expelled without explanation. They claimed I had violated protocol, even though the only requirement was occasional home visits to confirm I was still alive. In 2024, after exposing that Dritten companies were still active and laundering money through mining, I received another threat, this time a call from the Albanian mafia. Yet the state and the protection system did nothing. Instead, the legal harassment against me intensified.
Dritten, an Albanian national, arrived in Guayaquil in 2009 and, over 13 years, frequently traveled across Europe and Latin America. He built a network of 71 companies in Ecuador, spanning construction, agriculture, and real estate, allegedly to facilitate drug trafficking and money laundering. By December 2022, Jika fled to Dubai and remains a fugitive with an active Interpol red notice. Investigators found that his companies, many of which should be closed, are still operating as fronts for illicit activities, extending his influence across Ecuador's economy.
I was sued by alleged members of a dangerous criminal gang called Los Choneros, two brothers from Los Rios province. I hadn't even mentioned them in my investigation, and the plaintiff wasn't directly involved in the case. Later, we discovered that the inmate who filed the lawsuit was, at the time, the romantic partner of Diana Salazar, the Attorney General of the nation.
Attorney General Diana Salazar stands at the center of several growing scandals. Her reputation came under fire after leaked chats, first reported in the Grayzone's August 2024 expose, suggested she acts as a pawn of the U.S. Embassy and Ecuador's right-wing elite. The messages allegedly show her coordinating with U.S. agents to shield allies of Presidents Guillermo Lasso and Daniel Noboa, while aggressively targeting opposition figures. Critics argue that Salazar's selective justice, backed by chats implying U.S. influence, guarantees impunity for the right.
Their technology is stunning. It is all about phones. That is why there's so much information. They want Rafael Correa's head. They say Revolución Ciudadana is rising in the pools.
Consolidating a political order where Noboa thrives and leftist dissent is crushed.
It seems that in Ecuador, drug trafficking and especially money laundering sustains the system, but not only the Ecuadorian system, the international system as well. At the same time, you have the war on the criminal bans declared by President Noboa, which conveniently sidesteps all the cartels and focus on the foot soldiers, which are easily replaceable. What do you think about all of this?
I think there is a transfer of power going on. When President Guillermo Lasso took office, he was already compromised. The national police had been monitoring active members of the Albanian mafia, including one of his campaign financiers, Ruben Lleras. Lleras' ties to Ruben Cherez, and through him, to Albanian mafia leader Drayton Gjika, show that these criminal networks extend far beyond politics. We're not just talking about narco-politicians. These are businessmen, especially in the financial sector. The mafia even had direct links to one of Ecuador's major banks. Another major issue is the collapse of the country's security policy. U.S. Ambassador Michael Fitzpatrick publicly stated that Ecuador has narco generals, narco judges, and narco prosecutors, yet no investigations followed. I was the first journalist to file a criminal complaint against 4 national police generals for covering up the León de Troya report, which exposed Lasso's ties to the Albanian mafia. Nothing was done. Meanwhile, the government accelerated deregulation in the banana industry, a known conduit for drug trafficking. Executive decrees enabled fraudulent export quotas, including the infamous F code used to smuggle cocaine in banana shipments. Criminal organizations infiltrated security forces, as revealed in the Metastasis case, where 2 police officers involved in money laundering remain on active duty. Ecuador's dollarized economy makes it an ideal hub for laundering illicit funds, yet the lack of financial oversight continues to fuel corruption and violence. This isn't mere negligence, it points to systemic complicity.
While he was able to escape, Duran's fate somehow threatened to mirror Villavicencio's. Endanger the cash machine, and you're gone. The machine never stops. Since 2018, Ecuador has become a key node in the global cocaine trade. At least 17 reported seizures of drug-laced fruit containers, mostly bananas, have occurred across destinations like Russia, Spain, Italy, Germany, Turkey, and the U.S., totaling over 38 tons where quantities are disclosed. These busts reveal how Ecuador's banana exports have been systematically used to smuggle cocaine. Highlights include 257 kilos seized in Russia in 2018, 3 tons in Ecuador headed to Russia in 2023, 6.2 tons in Posoria in 2023-2024, and a record-breaking 13 tons intercepted in Spain that same year. Most likely, these reports only scratch the surface. Smaller domestic seizures and interceptions in transit hubs like Panama often go unreported. And while Luisa Gonzalez mentioned only 3 cases, out of the 17 documented cases, at least 5 are directly linked to the Noboa Group, through Noboa Trading SA or affiliates like Bonita Banana. These account for 1,751 kilos of cocaine seized between 2020 and 2025. The remaining 12 busts involve other exporters or unnamed firms. The data suggests that Noboa, whether by action or omission, is deeply involved, but not alone, in Ecuador's narco-export network. To understand the scale, consider this. Guayaquil, handling 70% of Ecuador's exports, moved around 325,000 banana containers in 2023 alone. Between 2018 and 2023, that likely totals 2 to 2.5 million containers. Yet fewer than 40 containers have been caught with cocaine. That's less than 0.002%, virtually nothing. Even factoring in possible unreported seizures, some estimates suggest 80 tons in 2024 alone, or roughly 4,000 containers. The interception rate might rise to 1 in 500. Still, the odds overwhelmingly favor traffickers. The scale of Guayaquil's shipping volume offers cover, allowing narco exports to flow with near impunity. Ecuador's ports are a hub for world cocaine trafficking, while its dollarized, deregulated system is a laundering paradise, feeding a global need for narco cash. A well-oiled system, unpunished, essential, and deadly.